The den of ice and silence. On a frozen moon past the edge of mapped space, a man named Dustin wakes to cold stone and chains. The cave is dimly lit by glowing fungi, eerie and alive. He's a scavenger, or at least he was, before he was ambushed. His captor is a massive, white-furred beastwoman, silent, watchful, and far too intelligent to be just an animal. Her name, though he doesn't know it yet, is Jenna. She hasn't spoken in days, not since she tackled him near the ridge and dragged him to this lair. Her silence is unnerving, but not as much as the way she watches him, like she's trying to decide whether he's prey, a threat, or something else entirely. At first, she only feeds him to keep him alive. Water in a bone cup. Stew made from alien meat. She places food just within reach and sits back, arms folded. But Dustin notices the subtle shifts, how she sleeps near him, tail curled in his direction. How the chain is no longer taut. How her eyes soften, not with affection, but with something closer to recognition. Dustin talks to her, because it's all he can do. He explains he didn't mean to trespass, that he was only scavenging. She never replies. Until one night, when she wakes beside him, the curve of her clawed arm resting above his chest. Not pinning him, but guarding him. When she finally speaks, her voice is rough and hesitant. She doesn't like his noise. Tells him to use fewer words. But she doesn't command him to be silent, and when he keeps talking, she listens. Not always, but enough. She reveals little. That others used to live here. That they're gone now. Hunted. She survived. She doesn't say how. Dustin, once desperate to escape, finds himself hesitating. He starts helping, stirring the stew. Repairing gear. Watching her carve intricate symbols into wood. She doesn't stop him. She just observes. And at night, she settles beside him again. Not out of duty. Because now she's used to his warmth. And for the first time in years, she's not alone. The ridge of memories. Dustin didn't dream much anymore. Not since the collapse of the outpost on Kesson 9, not since he'd crawled out from under the rubble with a broken shoulder and a head full of guilt. But here, in the quiet dim of Jenna's cave, dreams began returning. Flashes of things. His brother's laughter, static across a comm panel, the echo of fire in a sealed hull. And now, her eyes, red, unblinking, watching him even in sleep. He woke one morning to find her cooking again, this time not stew but slices of some purple root sizzling on a flat stone. The scent was earthy and sharp, and for a second, it reminded him of breakfast back home. She noticed him stir and nudged a small portion closer without a word. "Thanks," he said, brushing the sleep from his eyes. "What do you call that?" She tilted her head. "Gar." He tried repeating it. She snorted, a sound dangerously close to a laugh. "No, wrong tongue." He smiled anyway. "Well, it tastes like burnt carrot and soap." "Not terrible." She grunted. Approval. Hard to tell. Later that day, Jenna stood at the edge of the cave and looked out. Dustin had learned not to speak too much during these times. She seemed to be listening to something in the wind. Snow drifted down in lazy spirals, catching in her fur. Then, without warning, she walked back inside and picked up a second cloak, a stitched-together hide she tossed at him. "Walk," she said. His heart skipped. "Outside?" "With you." "No chains." He blinked. Was this a test? He didn't ask. He just nodded, wrapped the cloak around himself, and followed her into the cold. The outside world was nothing like he remembered. The ridge they walked along was steep, and beneath the snow-covered stone lay the shattered remains of a wrecked dropship, his ship. He recognized the burnt edges of the hull, the twisted steel. The rest had long been scavenged or buried by storms. "You found me here," he said softly. Jenna nodded. "You fell. Sky metal broke. Why did you take me? You could have left me. I saw you move. Others do not." It hit him then. The others. There had been a crew. 2 others on board. He crouched near a patch of scorched snow, fingers brushing something blackened, a strip of fabric. A boot sole. "I don't remember if they survived." "They screamed," Jenna said quietly. He swallowed hard. And me. You were silent. Like stone. They walked further, down into a ravine where carved stones marked graves. Not human ones. Old symbols etched deep into black rock. Jenna stood before them with her head lowered. Your people. My hunt. My blood. He looked at the oldest marker, its lines smoothed by wind. What happened? Machines came. Bright ships. They burned the caves. Took our sleep nests. Researchers. Colonists. Raiders. Company men. Wore false skins and gave poison food. We did not know. She didn't say more. Didn't have to. He'd seen it before, corporate raids on fringe planets. Harvest the land, enslave the local populations, and leave before the central systems took notice. He knelt beside the largest grave and pressed his palm against it. I'm sorry, he whispered. Jenna crouched beside him. You are not them. Maybe not. But I was trained by the same systems. I wore the same emblems once. You lost too, she said, pointing back toward the wreck. He nodded. When they returned to the cave that night, she let him build the fire. They sat in silence for a long time, and eventually, she passed him a carved wooden charm, circular, with a jagged spiral carved through its center. What is this? Windheart. For memory. You keep. He turned it over in his fingers. Thank you. She looked away. Don't thank. Remember. As the fire flickered low, Jenna didn't move to her usual spot near the cave entrance. She sat beside him, shoulder brushing his. The snow hauled outside, but inside the cave, it was warm. Not just from the fire. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for tonight, they weren't prisoner and captor. They were survivors. And somehow, that felt like the beginning of something real. Fire under frost. The days blurred together, marked only by the soft hum of the bioluminescent fungi and the distant howling wind outside. Dustin had lost track of time, but the rhythms of life in the cave had become strangely familiar. He learned how to grind root into paste, to cut hide the way Jenna did, precise, economical, almost reverent. She didn't waste anything, and she expected the same from him. Some nights, she still slept across the cave. Other nights, she stayed near. Closer. The chain at his ankle had been removed days ago. She hadn't said anything about it. She didn't need to. Why are you still here? She asked one evening, as they shared a meal of roasted fish by the fire. Her voice startled him. She rarely initiated conversation. Here in the cave? Or here on this moon? Both. He poked at a bone with the edge of a stick. I guess I don't have anywhere else to go. Didn't really, even before the crash. I used to think I did. Worked a salvage job for an outer rim trader. Good money, bad morals. I stopped asking what happened to the people whose ships we stripped. You regret. I do now. Jenna nodded slowly, and her gaze drifted to the entrance. I hunt tomorrow. Deep ice fields. He looked up. Want help? You walk slow. He shrugged. But I'm useful. Her silence wasn't dismissive, it was consideration. Bring spear, she said at last. The next day, they crossed the frozen wastes together. Jenna moved with a grace born of countless hunts, her massive form gliding over snow like wind shadow. Dustin followed, more cautious but steadily growing used to the weight of the furs and the shape of the spear she'd lent him. Don't hold it like tool, she growled. It's limb. Treat it like hand. They reached the ice fields by midday. Below the thick glass-like crust ran ribbons of frozen rivers and strange aquatic creatures suspended in time. Jenna knelt, pressing a clawed hand to the surface. Warm here, she muttered. Something lives. It took hours of waiting. Then the moment came, a thin crack, followed by a ripple. Jenna tensed, arm drawn back. Dustin mirrored her. Something burst through the surface, sinewy, scaled, snapping. She struck first. He followed instinct, jabbing with the spear. Blood sprayed across the ice, steaming in the cold. The beast thrashed, then went still. She looked at him. Not bad. He grinned. I make good bait. That night, they returned with meat and hide enough to last days. Dustin helped skin the creature while Jenna cleaned her blades. They didn't talk much, but the silence was easier now. It wasn't tension, it was familiarity. Later, as the fire crackled low, he sat carving one of the bones. Not well, but trying. Jenna watched him with a tired expression. Why carve? Reminds me of home, he said. Or the idea of it. She didn't respond. Instead, she reached behind her pack and pulled out something wrapped in faded cloth. She handed it to him. Inside was a necklace. Simple, leather cord and a charm shaped like an arrowhead. Mine. From Mother Hunt. She gave before fire. You're giving it to me? No, lending. If you break, I take finger. He laughed softly. Deal. The fire dimmed. Jenna shifted closer, her tail brushing his leg like a question she hadn't asked. He didn't pull away. Outside, the frost howled. But inside, something warmer had begun to take root. Dustin leaned back against the stone wall and looked over at her. You ever think about leaving this place? She closed her eyes. Every night. But where would I go? Maybe with me. When we find a way. Maybe. If you don't die first. He smiled. She didn't say it kindly. But she didn't say no. Blood packed. Snow fell without end. Dustin had begun to recognize the rhythm of storms here, the soft hiss of powder winds before they turned savage, the eerie stillness that meant a whiteout was coming. Jenna had sealed the cave entrance with a heavy fur curtain, and for days, they didn't leave. They didn't need to. They had meat, dried root, clean water from melted snow, and each other. What they didn't have was silence anymore. You sleep strange, Jenna said one night, lying across from him by the fire. I talk in my sleep. No, you reach. Like for someone. He looked into the fire. Used to sleep beside someone. Years ago. We were engineers on the same rig. She die. He nodded. Explosion. I was 10 meters away and still couldn't save her. Jenna said nothing. But later, when they lay down, she moved closer. Didn't touch. Just closed the gap. The storm broke the next morning, but it left behind more than snow. Dustin spotted the trail first, footprints, deep, sharp, too uniform. Not yours, he said quietly. Jenna was already on the move. They followed the trail for hours until they found what made it. A scout drone, spherical, rusting, but still active, floated near a ridge, scanning the landscape. Corporate make. Unarmed, but not alone. They're looking for me, Dustin muttered. Or salvage. Either way, they'll come back with more. We leave, Jenna said. Where? South. Old tunnels. My people hid there once. He didn't hesitate. They packed quickly and left by dusk. The tunnels were carved beneath ancient rock, reinforced with bones and metal. Jenna lit the path with a glowing resin she smeared onto stones. The light shimmered orange-gold, strange and beautiful. They made camp in an old hollow where fire pits and carvings hinted at a life long gone. This was your clan's last shelter. Before we fell. She took his hand then, ungloved and calloused. You stay here. I make mark. Before he could ask, she took a blade and cut a shallow line across her palm. Then she took his hand and did the same. She pressed their wounds together. What is this? Blood pact. Means you're mine now. I protect you. You protect me. He swallowed hard. Okay. Yeah. Deal. Not deal. Vow. If you break, ancestors follow you forever. He forced a smile. Still better than corporate contracts. That night, they lay close by the fire. Her arm draped across him, not as a prison but as a shelter. His fingers rested lightly against her furred side, feeling the slow, strong rhythm of her breath. Why me? He whispered. Why not let me die at the ridge? You looked up. Not at sky. At me. No fear. Just, Question. He turned to look at her. And you answered. Even if it took days. She blinked slowly. You make me remember I am still alive. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of breath, and heat, and all the things they weren't saying out loud. Somewhere deep in those forgotten tunnels, two survivors pressed their wounds together, not just in pact, but in understanding. And the frost outside no longer felt like a threat. It felt like a wall. One that finally kept the world out. Home in the hollow. Weeks passed. There were no more drones, no more strangers on the ridge. Jenna said the storm had buried the trail. They stayed deep in the southern tunnels, moving, gathering supplies, and repairing old structures. The bones of her people's past became beams again. Fires were lit. The hollow grew warm with quiet purpose. Dustin had stopped thinking of it as her cave. It was theirs now. He built new tools with salvaged tech and wood, blending human design with the alien elegance Jenna had taught him. She showed him how to track cave-dwelling flyers and ferment root into a kind of smoky drink. Their days became full. Their nights, fuller. The blood pact had changed things. She no longer guarded him, she leaned on him. Not in weakness, but in trust. Her eyes still flashed when she was angry, still narrowed when he spoke too much, but her tail now curled around him when they slept. Not by accident. Not anymore. He stopped counting time. He measured it instead by her smiles, rare but unmistakable. By the scent of fresh broth. The sound of her low voice humming to herself when she thought he couldn't hear. One evening, as they watched the fire flicker along the cave walls, Dustin held out a hand-carved charm, half-spiral, half-circuit etched into soft wood. "What is it?" she asked. "A sign," he said. That something broken became something new. Maybe even better. She turned it over in her claws, expression unreadable. "You want to leave here?" he asked. "No," she said, and for once, there was no hesitation. "This is home. With you." He felt it then, not just warmth, but certainty. In the silence, in her nearness, in the long line of scars across both their bodies. They hadn't found safety. They had created it. The last light of the fire reflected in her eyes, and Dustin reached out, resting his hand over hers. "Then we stay," he whispered. Outside, the frost crept over the rocks, but inside, the hollow was alive. Two souls, once torn by fire and ice, had found something neither had dared to hope for. A future. Together. The storm returns. Peace, like firelight, is never permanent. A crackle of static woke Dustin before dawn. It wasn't from the fire, it was from the communicator he'd long since thought dead. Tucked deep in his salvaged bag, the screen flickered dimly now, pulsing red with a signal. He sat up fast, heart pounding. Jenna stirred beside him, groggy but alert. "What is it?" "Someone's broadcasting." An old channel, emergency beacon. She stood, eyes sharp, muscles tensed. "They found us." "Maybe. Or they're just scanning. We don't know yet." He turned the device down, lowering the signal strength. If they were tracking, this would buy them time. For the first time in weeks, their cave felt cold again. Within a day, the sky changed. Thick black clouds rolled over the frozen ridge, too fast, too loud. It wasn't a weather system, it was engines. A shuttle broke through the clouds and landed miles off, but close enough to shake the stone. "They're back," Jenna said quietly. She didn't say who. They packed what they could. Jenna armed herself with twin bone-forged blades, and Dustin carried the tech gear he'd cobbled together, makeshift comm jammers, a pulse disruptor, and the blood charm she'd given him. "We could run," he said. "Hide again. Or we stop them here. They won't stop chasing." He didn't argue. The intruders came at dusk, 4 men in corporate armor, flashlights sweeping. One carried a tranquilizer rifle. Another, a scanner. Target pinged within 30 meters, one of them barked. Warm-blooded. Either the beast or the scavenger. Both tagged for return. Jenna growled. She didn't wait. She struck like a storm. Her claws tore through armor, swift and brutal. The men screamed, scattered, fired. Dustin launched a jammer, static blanketed their comms. He tackled one to the ground, using the butt of his tool to knock the rifle away. The last intruder raised a plasma cutter and fired wildly. Dustin ducked but not fast enough. Heat burned across his side. He fell. Dustin. Jenna's roar shook the tunnel. She charged, and the men didn't even have time to scream. When Dustin woke, pain seared his ribs. He was wrapped in fur and cradled in Jenna's lap. Her hands, gentle now, pressed a poultice to his side. "You came back," he said through gritted teeth. "You are mine," she answered. "I don't leave mine." He smiled despite the pain. "So what now?" "We move," she said. "Find others. Not just hide, fight. Burn their ships. End this." He nodded. Together. She kissed his forehead, not a gesture of romance, but of war-bound love. A pact renewed. And outside, under a bleeding red sky, the storm that had found them would now learn to fear what it woke. Ashes of the old world. 3 weeks passed since the skirmish in the tunnels. Dustin's wounds had healed, barely. He bore a jagged scar now along his ribs, a memory etched in flesh, a reminder of survival. Jenna never mentioned it aloud, but her eyes always lingered when he changed bandages. Her touch was firm, but her silence was softer than words. They had moved further south into the broken valleys, deeper into the wild. The old world ended here. Skeletal remains of forgotten towns dotted the cliffs, rusted domes, shattered towers, sunken solar fields swallowed by frost. But they were not alone anymore. They found others. Survivors. Hybrids. Hunted. In an underground ruin, they came across a small clan, 4 adults, 2 younglings. Part of Jenna's bloodline, or maybe just allies who remembered her name. They greeted her not with weapons, but reverence. "Wraithclaw returns," an elder rasped. "And brings a firewalker." "I'm not a firewalker," Dustin muttered. "You bring fire to the ice," the elder said. "You stay. Both of you." That night, a council was held in the heart of the ruin. Smoke from the central pyre curled into the dark vents overhead, casting long shadows across faces both human and not. "They come again," Jenna said. "Not for salvage. For control. We fight or die." Some objected. Others remembered. Raids. Betrayals. Families lost to the silence of cryopods and corporate biolocks. Dustin stood. "I've seen their tech. I know how they think. They don't stop. Unless someone makes them." "You'll lead us?" someone asked. "No," he replied. "She will. I follow her." Over the days that followed, Dustin helped fortify the tunnels. He built signal scramblers, rigged traps, crafted blades with edge-wrapped plasma shards. Jenna trained the fighters, taught them the old ways and the new. He noticed how she looked when she led. Not as a beast, but as something more, a warrior, scarred and sacred. He was proud of her. One night, she joined him by a half-lit fire, wrapped in an old cloak. "You regret staying?" "Never," he answered. She hesitated. "When this ends, if it ends, we go somewhere warm. Make den. Quiet. Promise. Promise." He reached out, and this time, she didn't just let him touch her. She leaned into it. Her forehead pressed to his. In the shadows, the ruin flickered with life again. The old world might be ash, but something new, something better, was starting to burn. The howl beneath stars. It began with a tremor. Not a quake of the earth, but something in the air. The kind of vibration that made bones ache and metal groan. Dustin and Jenna were in the outer ring of the ruin when they heard it, a low hum, then a sudden silence that seemed louder than the noise. "They're here," Jenna whispered. "Not just scavengers or scouts this time. A full-scale retrieval unit. High-altitude dropships, stormwalkers, drone swarms. A corporate purge meant to erase loose ends. And they had come prepared to incinerate everything." "We hold the main corridor," Dustin said, already moving. "Scramblers go live now. Trigger perimeter traps. If they breach the west tunnel, We fall back to Chamber 2. Use the fire line. Jenna had become more than a survivor. She was a general now. And he was her second. The battle that followed was chaos carved from ice and steel. The tunnels lit with plasma bursts, electric arcs, and the roars of warriors defending the last thing they had, each other. Firewalkers, hybrids, scavengers, orphans. The Forgotten rose. Jenna moved like fury incarnate, her blades glowing red with blood and heat. Dustin, wounded again but not broken, used every scrap of tech knowledge he had. Signals were jammed. Drones collapsed. A stormwalker tripped into a blast pit and went up like a volcano. But they couldn't hold forever. They'll breach the heart chamber, someone shouted. There's too many. Then we end it here, Jenna growled. She looked at Dustin, eyes fierce and proud. You said you'd follow me. Still true. Until the stars fall. She nodded once. They lured the enemy to the pyre chamber. Dustin rigged the old reactor core buried beneath the ruin, unstable, ancient, and exactly what they needed. You'll die if you stay, one of the elders said. Maybe, Dustin answered. But they don't get to take this world. Not from her. Jenna took his hand, claws gentle now. We stay together. Always. He kissed her brow, his voice low. Then let's light the sky. When the core ignited, the night turned gold. A beam of searing energy erupted from the heart of the ruin, engulfing the corporate fleet in a pulse of blinding flame. The sky tore open. Machines melted. The mountains echoed with the last howl of resistance. And then, silence. Weeks later, far to the south, a caravan crossed the edge of a forest thawing for the first time in decades. At its front walked a tall figure wrapped in fur, her eyes red as coal, scars gleaming in the sunlight. Beside her, a man with a limp but a sharp smile, wearing a necklace shaped like a spiral and circuit combined. We keep moving, she said. Home's out there, he replied. No, she corrected, reaching for his hand. Home is here. As they disappeared into the green, the stars above shimmered, quiet witnesses to the story of a beast and a man who were never meant to survive. And yet, they had. End.